about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for.
Good morning, my loves. Sabah al-Ward. How are you today? I hope all is well, inshallah. We're all good, alhamdulillah. Okay, so today we are making harira. Harira is a traditional Moroccan soup. Has many variations. Today I'm going to be making a quick method, an all-in-one recipe. It's popular as a starter, but also eaten on its own as a meal in itself. There are many variations, as I said, and it's mostly served during Ramadan, although it can be made any time throughout the year. Okay, so without further ado, here we go. So I'm going to start by trimming off any excess fat. Here I'm using beef today, although you can use chicken or you can use lamb, or indeed you can make a vegetarian soup. It's entirely up to you, but my preference is beef. Okay, so I'm about to trim off the excess fat, and what you'll need is small diced sections of beef. You can make them as big or as small as you prefer, but seeing as this is a quick method, I'm going to chop them and dice them about 1 centimetre in length. So I was just reading something online, and it goes like this. Although harira is prepared year-round, it's famously associated with Ramadan, when it's likely to be among the spread of food offered to break the fast. This tradition is so ingrained that many Moroccans consider a meal during Ramadan incomplete if harira isn't on the table, which I do absolutely share that sentiment. I've come to love and expect harira during Ramadan, and if I don't have a bowl of this traditional soup after a day of fasting, something always seems to be missing, even if I've had an otherwise satisfying meal. And absolutely, I do agree. I'm not sure if you agree also. We as a family do find this an immensely satisfying meal, filling, delicious and aromatic. So there is no other dish that is worthy of your Ramadan table than harira. It's good to change it up now and again, but we always come back to harira. Right, so I'm trying not to add music because it's Ramadan. I'm just going to try and talk through the videos. So what I'll do is just speed up this process, and then I'll see you in a few moments. Okay, so once you've done that rather laborious task, just clean up your work area, work surface, and prepare for the next stage of harira. I'm just trying to kill two birds with one stone here, and I'm making a roast dinner at the same time. We always like to have a roast dinner the evening before Ramadan. And if you would like a recipe of how to make crispy roast potatoes, then please do comment in the box below. So normally I would seal in my meat with my onion and oil at the beginning with the chickpeas. However, because this is an all-in-one recipe, I'm not going to do that. So here you can see I've prepared some chickpeas. So these were dried chickpeas. I've soaked them in water overnight. They then do expand, and then you drain them and you put them in the freezer. So when you need them, you've always have lentils to hand. So I'm just going to add a good handful or a small bowl of chickpeas, like so. And when I'm ready for this, I will come back to it. Okay, so I'm just going to give that a quick rinse under the tap. and then set it aside until I'm ready to use it. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm using a pressure cooker here, just for ease. The heavier pots are best used for making harira, just so that it doesn't absorb all of that excess liquid. So I've got here 1.5 large onions, which I've sliced into half. I'm going to pop them into my NutriBullet, or you can use a other type of blender, and I'm going to add to this some celery, a carrot, some parsley, a stock cube, and some water. Okay, I'm just going to show you step by step how I do this. First, you need to wash and prepare your parsley and your coriander, and if you do have celery, which does still have the leaves on it, which we call karafis, I'm not quite sure what it's called in English, then it's a really good idea to use that because it adds a really intense, delightful aroma to your soup as well as taste. So I'm just preparing and washing my coriander and parsley here. I do actually have some karafis prepared and frozen, which I will add later on in the video. Chopped up 1 celery stalk, which I'm popping in with my onion. And this needs to be whizzed up until it's a nice runny consistency. You can either use tomato passata, or you can use tin tomato, or indeed you can use fresh tomatoes. For this size pot, which is an 8-litre pot, I would use around 8 medium-size fresh tomatoes. Once you've whizzed that up, you are going to now add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil into your pot. So once you've done that, add the tomato paste mixture and onion to your pot. And then go back and add the remaining half tin of tomatoes into your blender. Add the parsley, the coriander, and you also want to add 1 carrot. So once this is blended, you'll want to add 1 stock cube. Okay, the stock cube is optional. I'm going to throw 1 in because this is a large pot. If you're using a smaller pot, then only half a stock cube will suffice. Give that a quick mix around and let that simmer gently. Okay, once you've simmered that, add the remaining pureed tomato mixture. So in total, I've used 1 whole tin of tomatoes in this recipe. Okay, you can see here I've whizzed up half of the parsley I had. So a small handful of parsley, a small handful of coriander, and I've added that to the tomato mix along with the carrot. Now I'm going to start adding my seasoning and my spices. This is going to be a smooth type of harira. There are lots of variations, as I said, but we do prefer harira without all of the bits. I will be adding lentils and vermicelli later, however, and chickpeas. So for us, that's enough texture. Okay, so again, the size of the pot, it looks like there's a lot of salt, but you really do need it with such a large pot. So that's 1 whole wooden spoon worth of salt. Now for the spices. Okay, in Wujda we like to use karwiya, which is caraway, and here I've used the ground caraway, which are just blended seeds. So I'm using 1 whole teaspoon, and again the Wujda tend to use karwiya in their harira. Regional variations vary, and therefore some people might not use karwiya, so it is optional. I'm also going to add 3/4 or maybe 1 teaspoon of paprika, 3/4 of a spoon of ginger powder, half or 3/4 of a teaspoon of turmeric powder, and finally black pepper, half a teaspoon. Okay, just going to mix that all in. And finally I'm going to add the lentils. So I don't like too many lentils in my soup, otherwise it overpowers it. So I'm just using half a small bowl, or maybe 1/3 of a small bowl here. Not only do you get your protein from your beef, but also from your lentils and your chickpeas. So here I need to start to top up my pot with water, and we're going to allow this to cook for approximately 40 minutes until the meat and the chickpeas are cooked all the way through. So adding my chickpeas and my beef. As I said, sometimes I start off with gently searing in the beef with the onions and the oil and chickpeas, but because this is an all-in-one quick method, I haven't done that. Okay, so I'm just going to chop up 2 or 3 times until I'm about level with those 4 dots on either side, and then I'm going to tighten the lid and allow that to cook for 40 minutes and come back to it, which is when I will come to the second and third stages of making harira. So now I'm on the latter parts or stages of making harira. Here I have a lemon. I'm going to use the juice of the lemon, so 1 whole lemon. I'm just going to use my hand here just to catch any seeds. So this gives the soup a zingy taste. I also like to add lemon to my harira once I have served it into the bowl, so I'll add another squeeze of lemon then. I'm going to add the other half of the parsley and the coriander, and I'm also going to add 2 or 3 tablespoons of tomato puree, or just a good squeeze. I tend to cook by eye when making savoury dishes. Okay, I'm going to add, this is called krafis, this is frozen, and this is just celery, which has the leaves still attached to it. But in England they tend to cut off the leaves, which I think are the most flavoursome parts of the celery. And what I'm going to do, instead of whizzing up the parsley and the coriander, I'm just going to chop it, because this actually bruises the leaves and the stalks and gives more of an intense flavour. So just to finish off, instead of whizzing it up, I'm just going to chop it like this. This is optional, so this is a wild type of mint. I've washed it, chopped it up and popped it in the freezer. I'm not exactly sure of the name of the type of mint. There are many different types of mint, but this is slightly different than your mint you would use for drinking tea. This is a wild mint and used in savoury dishes, and it's typically used in Harira, which is made in Wujda, which is where my parents are from. And so yeah, I've just carried on the tradition of using a little bit of mint in my harira. Okay, this is obviously optional, so you don't need to add mint to your harira. It's perfectly fine without. So you just want to chop that up and add that to the rest of your parsley and coriander. This part of making the harira is called the doera, and it's just thickening the soup. So I'm adding about three tablespoons of plain flour. I will add one in a minute, another one, because it wasn't quite thick enough. I'm adding that plain flour to water. You could of course just use corn flour, but I prefer to use plain flour. Okay, so once you have a type of pancake consistency, you can see that's quite thin, then you need to put that to one side until the last 15 minutes of cooking time. Okay, so while the meat and the soup is cooking, I'm just preparing the doera, which is the thickening of the soup process, and also the tomato base that you saw me prepare just before this. Okay, so that's exactly how I want it, and we're all ready for the last stages. So that's the consistency you need, and this is the tomato base, which is thrown in the last sort of 10 minutes just for flavour, 10-15 minutes. So it's been 40 minutes now. I'm just about to check on my soup. So I've allowed the steam to come out before I've taken off the lid. So it's very important to do that. I'm just going to check to see if my chickpeas and beef are cooked. Oh, and by the way, I was also cooking a roast dinner at the same time. So I'm just going to add these bones for flavour. If you have any bones laying about in your freezer, then I'd definitely recommend adding them to your soup. Again, as much flavour as we can into our soup, but again, this is optional. So I'm going to add the doera now, and this is going to thicken up my soup. Nothing worse than a really runny soup. So slowly, you need to keep stirring it, otherwise it's going to stick to the bottom of the pot and burn. So for the next 15-20 minutes, you just need to keep the lid loosely on top of your pot and stir every few minutes, particularly now, because we don't want it to settle at the bottom of the pot and stick. Slightly more difficult when you've got bones in your soup, but never mind. So I'm going to let that cook now for 15 minutes, as I said, checking on it every so often. So here I'm just testing to see if the chickpeas and the meat have cooked, and simply by pressing it down you can tell if it's cooked because they will be very soft. So you can see the thickness you're aiming for and the colour you're aiming for. So now that the flour has cooked off after about 15 minutes and there is no film on top, okay, the white film has gone, which would have been from the flour. So now that has gone, I'm going to add my tomato paste and coriander and parsley mix. And I'm going to finally add in the parsley and the coriander for the aroma. Give this another 10 minutes or so. I'm also going to add vermicelli at this point, a good handful. We're almost there. Thank you for bearing with me. This is a very long-winded process, but this pot will last us 3 days during Ramadan, perhaps 4 in a fridge. You can also freeze it, pop it into small containers, but I prefer, if it's 3 days worth, then I'll just pop it in the fridge. The smell is amazing. I'm just going to taste for seasoning to see if I need to add any more salt. Seems okay. Right, we are done. Ready to serve. Traditionally served with dates and also shabakia, or as we say in Wujda, kareosh. So we serve up in small pots or large pots depending on the needs of your family. I'm just going to finish by saying Ramadan Kareem, Ramadan Mubarak. ادخل علينا بالصحة وهنا إن شاء الله والله يبعد علينا هذا البلا بالصحة والراحة.